Welcome to Preeminent Test Prep. Today I'll be taking you through how I improved by 410 points from the PSAT in my freshman year to the SAT in my senior year. So on my spring of my freshman year, I scored 1180 on the PSAT, and then in September of my senior year, I scored 1590 on the SAT. So this video will give you a better idea of how I progressed throughout high school on the PSAT to the SAT and the recommendations I would have for the PSAT and the SAT as far as improving your score over time, be that from freshman year to junior year or even just 90 days before you take the SAT. So my progression from the PSAT is I first scored 1190 in the fall of my freshman year, and then I had to drop by 10 points to 1180 in the spring of my freshman year. Then in my sophomore year, I scored 1280 and then 1350, 1350 being in the spring of my sophomore year, 1280 being in the fall. Now keep in mind, in my freshman and sophomore years, I did not spend any time studying specifically for the PSAT. So all increases in my score were strictly from taking classes, paying attention in those classes, such as English, algebra, and geometry. So in my junior year, I spent about 1 or 2 weeks before the PSAT studying for it, and I ended up getting a 1420 on that. And I would highly recommend doing more prep work for that fall National Merit Scholarship qualifying test because it can give you big scholarship dollars. I wasn't aware of that until about 2 weeks before. If I had known how much scholarship money there was based on that test, I certainly would have studied for more like 45 or 90 days before, because it's really important if you're looking to get big time merit scholarships from colleges. So I'd highly recommend studying more for that than I did. So after that, I was expecting to take the SAT in March of my junior year before it got canceled from COVID. So I spent about 3 months starting in December of my junior year studying for that test before it got canceled. And then upon its cancellation, I went ahead and took a few months off from studying the SAT and picked up again about 3 weeks before August 29. And I certainly wish that I had picked up studying for the SAT further back before that, 3 weeks before August 29, because I went into that SAT feeling rusty. I wasn't as sharp with my answers or as certain about my answers. So I then took the next 3 weeks after that August 29 SAT and really started to prep even more, 1 to 2 hours a day, some days even 3, and I ended up getting 1580 and then a 1590 on September 26 with back-to-back perfect math scores and back-to-back perfect writing and language scores. So my progression from my freshman to junior year. So now I'm going to give you an idea of how you can progress in your PSAT scores from your freshman year to your junior year without specifically studying for the PSAT. So the classes you take from your freshman to junior years, they matter as far as how much you're going to improve on the PSAT and improve your capability of scoring on the SAT. It's not everything, but it certainly is to a certain extent going to help you. So number one tip would be to pay attention in English 10. Most people take the SAT in their junior year. So that year before you take that SAT, paying attention in English 10 and doing your reading is going to help you on that reading section and on that writing section. You want to pay attention to any grammar rules and any comments on grammar your teachers are making on your essays, because the grammar rules are very important for the SAT writing section. Additionally, you're going to want to pay attention in your Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry classes. The SAT Math section has lots and lots of Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, as well as some geometry on it. You have to make sure you're paying attention in those classes, otherwise you're going to have to spend more time prepping later on for the SAT because you have to catch up on work that you missed in those classes. So make sure that you pay attention in your math classes in your freshman, sophomore, and junior years. Consider taking the AP class. It's not necessary to take an AP class to do well on the SAT, but it can certainly help. For example, if you were to take AP Language and Composition in your sophomore or junior years, or senior year if you're going to take the SAT in your senior year, though I would recommend taking the SAT in your junior year, AP Lang can help. AP Language and Composition, it can help you on the reading section as well as the writing section. When you write essays, your teachers will give you feedback on grammar. Your teachers may even teach you grammar and things like similes and things you could use on the SAT essay if you decide to take the SAT with essay. So AP Lang is a good one. If you're looking for math, there isn't necessarily a math AP class that is particular to the SAT, but I did take AP Physics 1 and I found a lot of the algebra that you had to do on AP Physics 1, because it's an algebra-based class, it was applicable to the SAT. So questions on velocity and acceleration and position, those questions, they can show up on the SAT, and you can do them without knowing AP Physics 1, but AP Physics 1 can help you because you're used to seeing those types of questions. Next, just try to get good grades in general in your freshman through junior year. As far as the SAT goes, a lot of it is making sure you're paying attention to details and that you know certain grammar rules. that you're able to apply concepts. And if you want to get practice doing well at those things, an important way to do that would be to get good grades throughout high school. It's going to help you feel more prepared going into the SAT, and you're going to have a better idea of how to pay attention to details that you need to know. So the PSAT / National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. So this is a test that I didn't realize the importance of until about 2 weeks before. And if I had known the importance of it, I would have studied for probably more like 90 days before it, because there's big time scholarship money on the line. So why am I including it in here? Because it really matters, and I think that more people need to know about it. So why it matters. If you do well on this test, you can become a National Merit semifinalist, at which point you are in the running to become a National Merit finalist. You have to write some essays and submit things like your grades, I believe. And then if you are one of the winners, you become a National Merit finalist. And National Merit finalists, they can get big time merit scholarships from colleges and universities. So that can be very big. The National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test usually takes place in the fall of your junior year. And should you prep for it? In my opinion, yes, you should. I would recommend prepping for it for 90 days, similar to how you would for the SAT, if you want to make it to becoming a semifinalist. And you can still make it to becoming a semifinalist if you only prep for 30 days, but it's much, much less likely. So I highly recommend prepping for that test, and that's why I included it in here. So as far as specifically preparing for the SAT, so I just touched on preparing for it passively over the years leading up to before you take it by paying attention in your classes and learning material that will be tested on it. But as far as specifically preparing for the SAT itself, here's what I would do. So as far as when to start preparing for the SAT, I would recommend preparing for the SAT for 90 days if you want to improve by more than 100 points from your PSAT, and or if you want to score above a 1500. If you want to score above a 1500 and you scored 1420 on your PSAT, I would still recommend studying for 90 days. Even though I say below that 30 days is if you want to improve by less than 100, if you're trying to score above 1500, your margin for error is very slim, and I think that 90 days of prep would suit you well, because the questions you have to get right are much more difficult than if you were going from a 1200 to a 1300. So I would recommend doing 30 days of prep if you want to improve by less than 100 points. I think that it's certainly possible to improve by 80, 70 points, 90 points with only 30 days of prep if you're doing an hour a day. And then 14 days if you want to improve by 50 points or less. That's more so not going from 1550 to 1600, because like I said, that rule of scoring above 1500, it's really going to take a lot more time than it is to go from a 1000 to a 1050. So I would definitely recommend, if you're just trying to go from like a 1000 to a 1050, you can do it in 14 days in my opinion. You certainly can prep for longer than that if you would like, but I think it's possible to improve that by 50 points in 14 days if you're doing an hour a day. As far as how did I improve my score? So this specifically is not talking now from my freshman to junior years, but this is specifically talking about from my junior year and senior year when I was particularly studying for the SAT itself, not just other classes and how it impacted that. So I decided to make it a priority. When I got that 1420 on the PSAT, I said, okay, I really would like to get into a good college, a top college. I'm going to go ahead and make it a priority to study for the SAT. So that meant I had to take practice tests, right? If you play sports, you know you have to practice how you're going to play. So that means I had to simulate realistic test conditions. I took practice tests, and I studied what I got wrong and why my answers were wrong. I studied why the correct answers were right and how I can get to those correct answers in the future so I don't make the same mistake twice. You never want to miss the same type of question on the SAT practice test twice, just like you never want to miss the same question on an SAT practice test as you do on the SAT. Next, I learned grammar rules, the writing section. If you know your grammar rules, that writing section becomes a lot easier and you can do it much, much faster. So it's very important you learn your grammar rules if you want to improve your SAT writing score. I learned math rules, patterns, tricks, and tips. Now what I mean by this is the SAT math section, you have to know how to use equations, and you have to know what those equations mean. Now once you know what those equations mean and how to use them, then it becomes a matter of pacing. So you have to be able to get to the right answer quickly. There are a lot of people who know how to solve these math problems but can't do them quick enough. Sometimes that is because they aren't doing them the right way, in the sense that they're showing more work than they need to and taking more steps than they need to. That's where recognizing patterns and setups and tricks and tips comes in. There are certain ways that questions can be oriented and solved for that take half the time or a quarter of the time that it would take to solve them out if you were writing out all the steps and doing it in a way that is different from if you were able to just recognize the setup and the pattern and apply a certain strategy. So it's important to learn those strategies and setups. Next, I learned, studied, practiced, and implemented reading strategies. So reading strategies on the SAT reading section, there are certain question types that will appear, such as support your answer with evidence, which lines have this evidence, what is the main purpose of including these lines, what do these lines show about the character's feelings towards this thing. All of those question types may be repeated across practice tests. So recognizing those question types and what you have to do on those are very helpful in the reading section. So you want to hone in your reading strategy, know what order you're going to approach the passages, know your strategy, determine that strategy, and apply it to practice tests. Next, I used my calculator appropriately. Now what this means is on the math with calculator section, you are allowed to use a calculator. What that does not mean is you should use a calculator on every single problem. If you do that, it can slow you down because mental math sometimes can be quicker than using a calculator. Now at the same time, you don't want to underuse your calculator. There are questions on the math calculator section that have big numbers. You don't want to be adding and subtracting big numbers by hand or dividing or multiplying them by hand if they're very big. In that case, it's easier to use a calculator. So you need to determine what the right calculator use is for you in order to finish the test in time with accurate answers. So what are my recommendations as far as what I would tell my friends and other people on how to prep? So I would recommend watching Preeminent Test Prep, which is our videos that I'm making right now. I would recommend watching our videos. We have a 90-day SAT preparation series we are currently releasing. We have day 1 out right now. By the time you're watching this, we probably have all 90 days up. So we have that out. I would recommend that. I would also recommend taking practice tests. Taking practice tests is very, very important for the SAT because it is a timed test and you have to be able to pace well. So part of that is practicing your pacing and practicing what you're going to do when you encounter questions you don't know the answer to. So you need to make sure you're taking practice tests and then not only taking them, but then evaluating why your answers were wrong and why the correct answers were correct. Now, in doing that, after you take a practice test, Preeminent Test Prep, our videos, we have videos up for most practice tests. We have them for practice tests 1 through 10 of writing and language section, practice tests 1 through 10 of the math no calculator section, and these are in-depth answer explanations. So we're explaining why answers are correct, why others are incorrect, and we have some up for reading, some up for math with calculator. We'll probably eventually have most, if not all of them, up for the math with calculator and the reading sections as well. Tip number 2, eat healthy. So you want to be eating healthy not just the night before the SAT, but in the lead up to it so you can stay focused and be able to have that endurance to study for the SAT for multiple days in a row. You want to be able to feel good, feel focused, and feel fresh. You don't want to be tired from having just eaten 10 bags of Skittles the night before. You want to be eating healthy, staying focused. You want to stay calm. So that's a big thing. You want to be able to enter the SAT prepared, and you don't want it to be a false faith. You want to enter the SAT having been preparing for it for a month or 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, so you feel prepared and calm because you know what to do when you encounter questions you're not sure of immediately, and you have a designated plan and strategy for each question. You have to trust yourself if you're prepared. If you have prepared for the test, you need to trust yourself and that you will get answers correct. That is to a certain extent. You're not going to be able to trust yourself if you didn't prepare. If you have prepared, though, don't be second-guessing yourself on every question because you will run out of time. So make sure to subscribe, like, and share all of our Preeminent Test Preps videos. You can check out our channel for more SAT prep, AP class tips, college application tips. You can check links in the description for any private tutoring that's available, any application consulting that's available, and any donation links that are available. So thank you for watching and have a great day.